Hello, and welcome to our next portion of the Scrolls of Ezekiel. I believe tonight we are on part 16, covering chapters 42 and 43, which are very detailed, continuing on with the temple and the holy place, the altar, and just so many details that the Most High showed Ezekiel in a spiritual sense for what is to come for us as his people, as believers who are walking in spirit and truth with him, seeking him and following the ancient paths. So, with that being said, um, let me go to the portion that we'll be reading. And I think we're just gonna read all the way through the chapter. Yeah, we're gonna read just all 20 verses if you can read all of them. Let me extend this out. Jess, you're reading, right?
Yes. Okay. I
Let
can
me,
start.
yeah, you can start.
Okay. Then he brought me out into the outer court by the way toward the north, and he brought me into the chamber which was opposite the separating courtyard, and which was opposite the building toward the north, facing the length, which was 100 cubits, the width was 50 cubits, was the north door. Opposite the inner court of 20 cubits and opposite the pavement of the outer court was gallery against gallery in 3 stories. In front of the chambers toward the inside was a walk 10 cubits wide at a distance of 1 cubit, and their doors faced north. Now the upper chambers were shorter because the galleries took away space from them more than from the lower and middle stories of the building. For they were in 3 stories and did not have pillars like the pillars of the courts. Therefore, the upper level was shortened more than the lower and middle levels from the ground up. And a wall which was outside ran parallel to the chambers. At the front of the chambers toward the outer court, its length was 50 cubits. The length of the chambers toward the outer court was 50 cubits, whereas the facing the temple was 100 cubits. At the lower chambers was the entrance on the east side, as one goes into them from the outer court. Also, there were chambers in the thickness of the wall of the court toward the east, opposite the separating courtyard and opposite the building. There was a walk in front of them also, and their appearance was like the chambers, which were toward the north. They were as long and as wide as the others, and all their exits and entrances were according to plan. And corresponding to the doors of the chambers that were facing south, as one enters them, there was a door in front of the walk, the way directly in front of the wall toward the east. Then he said to me, the north chambers and the south chambers, which are opposite the separating courtyard, are the holy chambers which the priests who approach the Adon shall eat the most holy offerings. There they shall lay the most holy offerings, the grain offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering, for the place is holy. When the priests enter them, they shall not go out of the holy chamber into the outer court, but there they shall leave their garments in which they minister, for they are holy. They shall put on other garments, then they may approach that which is for the people. Now, when he had finished measuring the inner temple, he brought me out through the gateway that faces toward the east and measured it all around. He measured the east side with the measuring rod, 500 rods by the measuring rod all around. He measured the north side, 500 rods by the measuring rod all around. He measured the south side, 500 rods by the measuring rod. He came around to the west side and measured 500 rods by the measuring rod. He measured it on the 4 sides. It had a wall all around, 500 cubits long and 500 wide, to separate the holy areas from the common.
Thank you. So again, a lot of literal details listed here that have much spiritual connotation. And if you recall from the prior portion last week, we were talking about how it was the Most High Messiah who was leading Ezekiel the way and showing him the new temple, the new Jerusalem. Essentially, this is what we are looking at and looking forward to in what he was expressing, explaining, describing, and now I'm just gonna go to the slides and we're gonna talk about the significance of all of this because it's just so beautiful. Okay, let me come over here. All right. So in this chapter, details are given of the priest's quarters and the inner court, probably meaning here the temple yard or the separate place and other buildings, and the external dimensions of the temple area. So very intricate details and measurements and things like that. And it continues to and concludes the describing and measuring of this mystical temple. Mystical because we know that this was not going to be a physical third temple, as some people believe that it would have been, or was going to be, or will be as a sign of Messiah coming back, but rather coming during the millennial reign. The prophet has taken a very exact view of the temple and the buildings belonging to it, and is now brought again into the outer court to observe the chambers that were in that square. A description of the chambers that were about the courts, their situation and structure we see in verses 1 through 13, and the uses for which they were designed are specifically in verses 13 and 14. Also, a survey of the whole compass of the grounds, which was taken up with the house and the courts belonging to it, is what's described in verses 15 through 20. The visual created by this chapter draws special interest because, from a bird's eye view or an aerial view, the design of the temple itself had many layers with different levels of holiness. Inside was the Holy of Holies, which this is like an example of the chambers, but we also see it over here, the outer court, and then the Holy of Holies at the center of it. So inside was the Holy of Holies where the presence of the Most High dwelt. The next layer, north and south chambers, was open to the priests who had access to him. The third layer, which was within the inner gates, was reserved for the Levites. The outer court, where lay worshippers would gather, would be the fourth layer. Metaphorically speaking, the fifth, sixth, and seventh layers are the Temple Mount, the city, and the rest of the world. So we know the outer court is where those who are not in covenant with the Most High would dwell. So that would be that seventh layer or the first layer if you're looking from the bottom up. So I included this graphic. Liz actually shared this today in her stories, and I know you reshared it from someone else's page too, Liz, but this gives a beautiful depiction of the Holy of Holies, and there's something very interesting about the descriptions of the levels that I just mentioned. Each exclusively a layer based on verticality, so up from bottom to top, meaning the degree of closeness to the Elohim. And this plays out both in their physical presence, but also in their spiritual commitment. There are boundaries that go from completely profane, the world, to completely holy or set apart, which is the presence of the Adon, and every layer in between. So we can see this same hierarchy in our modern world today. There's people who are scattered all over the map sorry, let me close this. All over the map who are wholly committed to the Most High, or on the other spectrum, completely hostile to him. The major difference today is that the veil has been torn, which housed the presence of the Adon and now lives within us. Now there's no geographical or nationalistic boundary that separates anyone from entering into the Holy of Holies with the Adon himself. The only requirement, of course, is being in covenant with him, being purified before him. There's no title or status required with that, though. Our high priest Yasha has entered into the temple not with the blood of lambs or bulls, but with his own perfect blood, which allows for everyone to experience his presence for eternity. This is both amazing and incomprehensible truth. Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself because it would be too much typing. In regards to the graphic, it's so crazy because I don't know if you saw that I put it together with an older one that I had shared,
Hmm. I saw.
facing the water, fire, and blood. So
Yes,
it says the way, it would be water.
right.
Truth, it would be fire. Where it says the life, it would be blood. And if you think about it, it goes perfectly with the description that you just said because of the fact that we come in through Messiah, which is the way. How
Hmm.
do we come in first? Through waters, the living water. Remember,
Baptized, being baptized in water and the old man coming out. I mean,
totally,
the old man dying out, dying as you arise.
totally understood what you meant. But yeah, no, I was thinking also what he told the Samaritan woman about, the water that I give you. Um,
Right.
you will never thirst again. And then from there, we move on to the truth, walking in truth, which means literally walking in fire, fire that purges out all iniquity.
Yeah.
Studying
Yeah.
with connections with fire. So it just blows my mind how perfectly designed the tabernacle, which embodies him and it's what embodies us when we become like him, right? Understanding that what's in the Holy of Holies is literally the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant with the Torah inside, which seals the covenant with the blood, which is the life. And it reminds me of Leviticus because the life is in the
The
blood.
life is in the blood. Exactly. I thought of that too. It's awesome. It's so beautiful how everything connects. And we see that it was very important to confirm the reality of the invisible temple and its purpose so that we would have this understanding. Because if you have the understanding, you look at this and you're able to say, wow, like Messiah is just that for us. And this is our way of entering in and being one with him by keeping the commands, by allowing that old man to die away through the baptism of the waters and seeing him as the living water that we should thirst and drink from. Yasmin just shared Psalm 1:3 that says that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields fruit in its season and whose leaf does not wither. And and whatever they do prospers. I love that scripture. And also Ephesians 2:6. And the Most High raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Yasha Messiah. Thank you. Thank you. Already so many connections, right? Um, so I also wanted to add that while a visionary temple, it was nevertheless firmly grounded in reality of what to expect, giving hope even to the Israelites in that time, once again, because Ezekiel was instructed to write everything down and to declare it to them, which we'll get to, so that they would also, in a sense, have hope that there was going to be a rebuilding. So the measuring made it clear to the people a number of facts which they needed to learn. Firstly, it stressed that the tabernacle of the Most High was now once more in the land awaiting them, although in a vision and not in literal form. Secondly, it pointed ahead to what was to come. And thirdly, it stressed that he was a holy Elohim and that to approach him was not to be endeavored lightly. Anything short of what appeared to be a detailed blueprint would not have achieved these aims. Those who heard Ezekiel speaking about it would naturally ask for details of what he had seen. So he needed these physical details to be able to describe things and would also find their hearts dance within them, just as we do now, um, at every little detail given, for it would remind them of the old temple which they thought they had lost forever. So it's just again, he received all of these physical details, seeing it in a spiritual sense to bring about that hope, to birth that hope within the people and now in us. So the measurement of each part of the temple demonstrated that it was being potentially brought into use for the people of the Most High. We can compare this with how he elsewhere arranged the measurement of Jerusalem to demonstrate that it belonged to him, that he was the beginning, that he was beginning his actions on its behalf, and that he had taken it under his protection, as we see in Zechariah 2, 1 through 5, which we'll read in a minute. Something again done invisibly, of which only the physical outcome was seen. We can also compare his arranging of the measurement of the New Jerusalem so as to bring out its perfection and readiness for use. So we see that in Revelation 21:15. And here then was a temple ready for use and through which the Most High was about to act. So again, lots of hope being expressed through this vision that Ezekiel was able to see. Um, we'll get to I'll read, let's see, I just want to make sure. Actually, let me read this too. So, another little graphic here. Obviously, we have a lot of, drawings of what the vision might have looked like, based on rationalizing, for the human eye and what had been described previously. But when we also see the measurements that are given, we see that they expand beyond a physical land. It's much larger. So the measurement of each part of the temple demonstrated that it was being, well, let me see. Oh no, I already read this. So here is a description of the chamber. So we go back inside, which, as that which went before, seems to us very perplexed and intricate through our unacquaintedness with the Hebrew language, because remember, this was translated from the Hebrew, so some of the words were transliterated and probably not in their most pure essence. So they were just trying to rationalize with the transliteration of it. And the rules of architecture at that time was different as well, in a sense. So we shall only observe in general that about the temple, which was the place of public worship, there were private chambers to teach us that our attendance upon the Most High in solemn ordinances will not excuse us from the duties of the closet. So if you think about going into your secret place and seeking Him, we must not only worship in the courts of the Most High's house, but must both before and after our attendance there enter into our chambers, enter into our closets, and read and meditate and pray to our Father in secret. And a great deal of comfort to the people of the Most High have found in their communion with the Most High in solitude. So it's worth it to fill yourself up in secret and be able to come out and worship Him in public. Um, I think about Enoch. I always go back to Enoch because he was one of those people that, and we see it in the book, that he really needed to go to the Father and decompress, if you will. Like, he needed to seek him and regain strength for the assignment that had been given to him so that he would be able to execute it according to what Abba was telling him to do. Um, so yeah, that to that point. Liz said, this is in regards to the graphic you shared on the tabernacle in my story today. Ezekiel 47 speaks all about water in reference to the door of the temple. So if you think about the sea of glass, that reminds me of that. I'm excited to read through the end of it too. Yeah, we're gonna go into that after. We're almost there, almost there. So also that these chambers were many, so there were many of them. There were 3 stories of them. And though the higher stories were not as large as the lower, they still served as well for retirement. So it would be just for conveniences for all such devout people. If you think of different, people in the Bible that would go into their secret place or departed not from the temple night or day. For example, Anna, we're going to read about her as well, or we're going to read the scripture that describes it as well. But also, Messiah said himself said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. In his house on earth there are so multitudes by faith have taken lodging in his sanctuary, and yet there's still room." So there's room for all who are ready, willing to give their lives over to him and seek him in spirit and in truth. And then lastly, that before these chambers there were walks of 5 yards broad. So if we look, we'll look back at verse 4. in which those that had lodgings in these chambers might cross paths, might meet for conversation, walk and talk together for their mutual edification, might communicate their knowledge and experiences, and ultimately see how we continue even in New Jerusalem to bear with one another in love and doing life together. And that's why your circle matters. The people who you are around matters. Influence from your loved ones matters because those could very well be the people that you'll be with in eternity, you know? So let's go now to the connections. All right. So I mentioned a few of the precepts already. I don't know why the Zechariah. Hold on, let me add it in because that should be the first one. Oh, that's why. Autocorrect always messes things up. Okay. So Zechariah 2, 1 through 5 says, Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. So I said, Where are you going? And he said to me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is its width and what is its length. And there was the angel who talked with me going out, and another angel was coming out to meet him, who said to him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls because of the multitude of men and livestock in it. For I, says the Adon, will be a wall of fire all around her, and I will be the glory in her midst. So going back to what you were speaking about, Liz, Zechariah connects beautifully as well with that entrance into the Holy of Holies, the purification process. So we see also Revelation 21:5. Then he who sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. So oh no, it wasn't supposed to be that one. My goodness. Let me go to verse 15. Although that is a beautiful precept too, because just as Ezekiel was instructed to write everything down, so was John. Let me go here really quick. Okay, sorry. All right. So verse 15 in Revelation 21. And he who talked with me had a gold reed to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. So lots of similarities there. And Yasmin mentioned Matthew 3:11. I baptize you with water for repentance, but after me comes one who is more powerful than I, whose sandals I am not worthy to carry. He will baptize you with Holy Spirit and fire. Amen. So that was John the Baptist speaking. Okay, Zechariah 3:7 says, Thus says the Adon of hosts, if you will walk in my ways and if you will keep my command, then you shall also judge my house and likewise have charge of my courts. I will give you places to walk among these who stand here. So, again, we see that he specifically instructed us over and over again through the prophets, through Moses, through all of the fathers of the faith on how if we walked in his statutes, if we kept his commandments, if we walked in purity, then we would be able to enter into the holy place and walk among, like it says here. We will have charge of his courts, and we will be given places to walk among those who stand there. So just something to look forward to. As I mentioned, Aunt Anna, Luke 2:37 says, And this woman was a widow of about 84 years old who did not depart from the temple, but served the Elohim with fastings and prayer night and day. So again, just a confirmation of the importance of going into your secret place, and having that intimate time with him, having communing with him frequently to be filled by him and recharged because we all need it. We all need it. Joshua 3:4 says, "Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before." And I believe in this passage here, it is speaking about the tabernacle that Joshua was to carry and have in once they cross the Jordan, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back and read that chapter in context really quick. So verse 1 says, "Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went through the camp and giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Adon your Elohim and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it." So you see that there had to be a level of consecration and holiness to be able to get close to the Ark of the Covenant in that time. And yes, thank you, Liz. So we know that the temple itself was not built until David's time. So the Ark of the Covenant was what was carried by the Israelites all throughout before the temple itself, the physical temple was built. Liz also said, and she was from the house of Israel, one of the few left in the land, speaking of Anna. So one from the scattered nations. Beautiful connection there too. All right. Then Exodus 19:12, we have also that says, "You shall set bounds for the people all around, saying, take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death." So once again, these two here are references, and we're going to be reading a lot of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers tonight, just because it helps us give reference to how things were prior to Messiah um, tearing the veil, prior to when the veil was torn and we actually had that direct access to his presence. But this was how the presence was approached or not approached. They were instructed to keep their distance, because if they came too close and there was unholiness within them, then they would fall to their death. So it was very important for whoever was approaching the presence of the Most High for that person to be consecrated before him and truly living a life of holiness before him. Numbers 35, 4-5 says, "The common land of the cities which you will give the Levites shall extend from the wall of the city outward 1,000 cubits all around. And you shall measure outside the city on the east 2,000 cubits, on the south side 2,000 cubits, on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the north side 2,000 cubits. The city shall be in the middle. This shall belong to them as common land for the cities." So just again, another reference to how the Israelites had those specific instructions of the outward area as well as the inward, that was for the Levites, for those who were deemed to be the holy ones, or the ones who would do the sacrifices, atoning for the sins of the people, which were the high priests as well. Leviticus 2:3 and 9-10. So this is for verse 13, verses 10-14, essentially. Which let me go back, and I think I said we were gonna look at verse 4. This was just in reference to, as I mentioned, how there was a walk 10 cubits wide in front of the chambers, where the people who were lodging in the chambers would be able to step out and run into others, I guess you could say. Okay, so we see 10 through 14 is also still speaking about the priest chambers, the walk that was in front of them, the doors of the chambers that were facing south, and the doors that were directly in front of the wall towards the east. And just continuing through with the holy chambers of the priests, where they would eat the offerings. And in verse 14, how they were to take off their holy garments before coming before the common people. All right, so Leviticus 2:3, verses 9 through 10, and verse 16. The rest of the grain offerings shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is most holy of the offerings to the Adon made by fire. Then the priest shall take the grain offering, a memorial portion, and burn it on the altar. It is an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Adon. And what is left of the grain offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is most holy of the offerings to the Adon made by fire. Then the priest shall burn the memorial portion, part of its beaten grain and part of its oil, with all the frankincense, as an offering made by fire to the Adon. So I'm going to read just a few precepts about or passages about offerings, the offerings that would become food for the high priests. Again, just because it's what's being described as well in this portion here. And we're going to talk a little bit about it too and the significance of why offerings are even mentioned as in New Jerusalem when we know that our Messiah became the offering for us. So Leviticus 4:12 and verse 21. So the whole bull he shall carry outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are poured out, and burn it on wood with fire. Where the ashes are poured out, it shall be burned. Then he shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is a sin offering for the assembly. Leviticus 5:11 through 13. But if he is not able to bring two turtle doves or two young pigeons, then he who sinned shall bring for his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering. He shall put no oil on it, nor shall he put frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. Then he shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall take his handful of it as a memorial portion, and burn it on the altar according to the offerings made by fire to the Adon. It is a sin offering. The priest shall make atonement for him for his sin that he has committed in any of these matters, and it shall be forgiven him. The rest of the priests as a grain offering. The rest shall be the priest as a grain offering. And then Leviticus 7:6 and 8:7, every male among the priests may eat it. It shall be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. And then 8:7, and he put a tunic on him, girded him with the sash, clothed him with the robe, and put the ephod on him. And he girded him with the intricately woven band of the ephod, and with it tied the ephod on him. So this now is speaking about the holy garments that the priests were to wear. Then Leviticus 10:17, why have you not eaten the sin offering in a holy place, since it is most holy, and the Elohim has given it to you to bear the guilt of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Adon. So this was where, sorry, Yasmin said, I'm thinking of the garments the prodigal son was clothed with. Yes. Yeah, that's a good reminder there too. And also, in Revelations, when you think about the garments that his people are to have, white, made clean, just a sign of how we've been cleansed of all unrighteousness, and are back in good standing with him. Although, even living now here in this realm, that's what we should be endeavoring to do all the time. Um, so this portion here, or this verse here, is referring to Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons. And if you know, Nadab and Abihu were his other sons, and they were the ones who gave the strange offering, and they fell dead. So there was still some leaven that needed to be removed within the sons of Aaron. And so we see that Moses had to continually correct them and pointed out the importance of eating the offerings in the right place. Okay, so continuing, I just want to make sure I'm in actually, let me go back to the presentation really quick because I wanted to point something out as well. Let's see. Um, Okay, yeah. So I know that I already showed this, but I had some more notes that I wanted to read from here. So the priests that were to approached onto the Adon would always be near and may not be non-residents, but still were called to the holy chambers because they were for the use of those that ministered in the holy things during the ministration. Those that have public work to do for the Alahim and the souls of men have need to be much in private to fit themselves for it. So again, going back to the importance of going into your chamber and um, reading His word, meditating on His word, praying, and being consecrated for Him, that they ought to be provided with conveniences for this purpose, which is the offerings that they would receive. There, the priests were to deposit the most holy things, those parts of the offerings which fell to their share, and there they were to eat them, they and their families, in a religious manner, for that place is holy. And when I say religious, I mean like in a very set apart and sacred way. And thus, they must make a difference between those feasts upon the sacrifice and other meals. So there, among other uses, they were to lay their vestments, their garments, which the Most High had appointed them to wear when they ministered at the altar. Their linen ephods, coats, girdles, the bonnet or turban that they were to wear. We read of the providing of the priest's garments after the return, also in Nehemiah 7, when they returned out of captivity. When they had ended their service at the altar, they must lay down those garments to signify that the use of them should continue only during that dispensation. But they must put on other garments, such as other people wear when they approached to those things which were for the people. That is to do the part of their service which related to the people, to teach them the law and to answer their inquiries. Their holy garments must be laid up that they may be kept clean and decent for the credit of their service. So I just wanted to add that in as well. So let's go back here to the connections. Let's see, where was I? Leviticus 14:13. And it says, then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering in a holy place. For as the sin offering is the priest, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. Deuteronomy 21:5. Then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for the Adon your Elohim has chosen them to minister to him and to bless the name of the Adon. By their word, every controversy and every assault shall be settled. So we see again, like I said, they would minister in the holy place, and then they would come out to the people to minister to them. Isaiah 56, verses 6 through 8. Also, the sons of a foreigner who join themselves to the Adon to serve him and to love the name of the Adon, to be his servants, everyone who keeps from defiling the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant, even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. The Adon Elohim, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, says, yet I will gather to him others besides those who are gathered to him. So we see in Isaiah that there is a future proclamation as well, that it would not only be the Levitical priesthood that would be the ones that were able to minister in the Holy of Holies. Oh, I see the chat is going. All right, let me continue. Jeremiah 33:15 through 16. In those days and at that time, I will cause to grow up to David a branch of righteousness. He shall execute judgment and righteousness in the earth. In those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will dwell safely. And this is the name by which she shall be called, the Adon, our righteousness. And I know that I think the last couple of weeks we've probably read this this scripture more than once. And it's just because with this whole portion, there are many repetitive scriptures along with Zechariah, the one the chapter 2, chapter 3, I believe chapter 14. We're also going to be reading from again tonight. And again, it goes to show you that he makes no mistakes, that he was just making sure that he confirmed everything through two or three witnesses, and then some in this case. Then we also have Hebrews 10, 1 through 4, and it says, for the law having a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with these same sacrifices which they offer continually year by year, make those who approach perfect. For then would they not have ceased to be offered? For the worshippers, once purified, would have had no more consciousness of sin. But in those sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sins. So we see here that the book of Hebrews is making reference to how these offerings were more of a memorial, an act that was done, but the inward change of sin and repentance was really done through the Holy Spirit. Zechariah 3, 4 through 5 says, then he answered and spoke to those who stood before him, saying, take away the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, see, I have removed your iniquity from you, and I will clothe you with rich robes. And I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head, and they put clothes on him. And the angel of the Adon stood by. So this as I was reading this, I did picture the prodigal son also receiving that exchange of garments once he came back. And I know you mentioned it, Liz, as in repentance to the father, that to his father, asking him for forgiveness. So it's just a foreshadowing of what our Heavenly Father wants to do in us as his children. And it's so encouraging. Exodus 29, 4 through 9 says, and Aaron and his sons shall bring to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and you shall wash them with water. And you shall take the garments, put the tunic on Aaron, and the robe of the ephod and the breastplate, and gird him with the intricately woven band of the ephod. You shall put the turban on his head, and put the holy crown on the turban. And you shall take the anointing oil, pour it on his head, and anoint him. Then you shall bring his sons and put tunics on them. And you shall gird them with sashes, Aaron and his sons, and put the hats on them. The priesthood shall be theirs for a perpetual statute. So you shall consecrate Aaron and his sons. So this was the instructions that were given for the high priest and what they should be wearing, which again is a foreshadowing of what is to come with us. So let me go back now to the presentation again. Okay, so we have verse 20 is mentioned here, or like a little graphic of it, because that one is the one that speaks about of course, to set apart what is holy from what is common. So we have attended the measuring of this mystical temple and are now to see how far the holy ground on which we tread extends. And that also is here measured and found to take in a great compass. Sorry, give me 1 second.
That's for you.
No, puppy, I don't want.
No, that's for you.
Okay, thank you. Here, you have this one. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so this is a large area, much larger than the present Temple Mount. And that's what I was speaking about earlier. How all of the measurements that are in these scriptures, if you look at them, if you convert them to, the metric system or whatever measurements today, they would extend beyond any physical land. So it's better understood that this reflects the transformed geography of Jerusalem and the true land of Israel in the millennial age. So the entire area was more extensive than today's Mount Moriah, where Solomon and Zerubbabel's temple stood. And, we're not 100% sure where exactly that truly was. But again, it just gives you the idea that the way that those, when they were built, were described also in the scriptures, these particular measurements in the book of Ezekiel were much larger. So the scheme requires as a great change in the topography of the land, which will occur as indicated in Zechariah 14:9-11, and we'll see that in a minute too, the very time which Ezekiel had in view. The purpose of the wall around the temple compound was to communicate the principle of the Most High's holiness as separated from that which is common. And I also wanted to make a point again. The whole is stated in the Hebrew to be 500 reeds by 500 reeds. The measuring reed was 6 long cubits and a handbreadth, which would make this an excessive amount. So like 3,000 cubits by 3,000 cubits. Okay, good, baby. If it referred to the outer wall of the it referred to the outer wall of the temple. But it may in fact also be the measurement which includes a space of separation, the part of the surrounding area which had to be set apart or separate from the common, separating the common from the holy. Comparing it to verse 12, where it says the whole limit around it, the temple, will be most holy. So such a space of separation, as we read in Joshua 3:4 with the 2,000, I forget what exactly it said. I think it was 2,000 cubits, where the people were not allowed to come within 2,000 cubits of the ark of the covenant of the Most High. Also in Exodus 19:12, where a boundary was set away from the holy mount, which people must not cross. And in Numbers 35:4-5, where such an area was set apart around the Levitical cities. So we see an ongoing theme here of separating that which is holy from that which is common. It was very obvious that the Adon wanted to make sure that there was a distinction there. Yes, be ye holy, for I am holy. And he must increase, or I must decrease, so that he can increase in me. So I just wanted to add that. We're going to read the last few connections for 15-20, and then we'll go to the next chapter. Okay, so the first one is Zechariah, which I mentioned, 14:9-11. And it says, and the Adon shall be king all over the earth. In that day it shall be, the Adon is one, and his name is one. All the land shall be turned into a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be raised up and inhabited in her place from Benjamin's gate to the place of the first gate and the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses. The people shall dwell in it, and no longer shall there be utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. So this again is a description and using landmarks to describe how big it, from where to where it would be extending. We also have Mark 11:17. And it says, Then he taught, saying to them, Is it not written, My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of thieves. So again, those chambers that were uh, described as being for the priests, if we are his royal priesthood, then we know that those are also set apart for us, um, as those many mansions that Messiah described that are in his house. That's what we'll be end up seeing at least. Isaiah 56, verse 7. Even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer. I know I already read a longer portion of 56, or well, yeah, 6 through 8, but just wanted to include this one again. Jeremiah 7:11 says, Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of thieves in your eyes? Behold, I, even I, have seen it, says the Adon. So we already know that everything from before had been profaned. So that which was going to come to pass, or that is going to come to pass, is going to be clean, it's going to be pure, it's going to be set apart. So we also must be set apart and clean and pure for him as well. 2 Corinthians 6:17 says, Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says the Adon. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. And lastly, Leviticus 10:10, that you may distinguish between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. So we were instructed from the beginning to be able to make the separation, and we had the physical representation through the Levitical priesthood. And we know that going from the Levitical priesthood, the transference of the Levitical priesthood to the Melchizedek priesthood through our Messiah, that we would all be now considered those holy ones for him, not no longer unclean, but able to enter into the Holy of Holies as long as we remain in covenant with him. So that is the end of chapter 42. Let's now go to 43. Let me just make sure we can read. Yeah, let's read 1 through 12 first. Whoever was going to read, was it Yasmin or Liz? I don't remember. Was Yasmin going to read or Liz?
I can read, it's fine. Yasmin had said she was gonna read, but okay.
I can read too if nobody can.
It's okay, I'll just read.
Hi, Eileen.
I
All right. Afterward, he brought me to the gate that faces toward the east. And behold, the glory of the Most High of Israel came from the way of the east. His voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. It was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision which I saw when I came to destroy the city. The visions were like the vision which I saw by the river Shebar, and I fell on my face. And the glory of the Most High came into the temple by way of the gate which faces toward the east. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Adon filled the temple. Then I heard him speaking to me from the temple, while a man stood beside me, and he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet. Oof. where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. No more shall the house of Israel defile my holy name, there nor they nor their kings by their harlotry, or with the carcasses of their kings on their high places. When they set their threshold by my threshold, and their doorpost by my doorpost, with a wall between them and me, they defiled my holy name by the abominations which they committed. Therefore I have consumed them in my anger. Now let them put their harlotry and their carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell in their midst forever. Son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple and its arrangement, its exits and its entrances, its entire design and all its ordinances, all its forms and all its laws. Write it down in their sight, so that they may keep its whole design, all its ordinances, and perform them. This is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop is most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. Did you want me to continue? I'm sorry.
No, you can read until 12. Thank you. I love this portion, honestly, because we see the glory of the Adon coming back in. And I say coming back in because we read in Ezekiel 11 that the glory of the Adon had departed. So this was where Ezekiel's visionary tour of the temple began in Ezekiel 40 and 6. So he had already now gone all around the temple, on the inside of it, from the bottom all the way to the top. He had seen everything from an aerial view, and now he was back on the east side. So also, as I mentioned, many years before in the vision, Ezekiel saw the glory of the Most High depart from the temple, and it left through the east gate. So as it departed, it came back in, which now I kind of wonder, and it makes sense how those who would be entering into the temple would go in from the north and exit through the south, or go in from the south and exit through the north. But the Most High entered and exited through the east. I don't know. It just an interesting point there. Liz said, and how he dwells in the midst of Israel. So if you are in Israel, where are you going to be at in this picture? Very true. Very true. And although the Most High could have entered the temple area through the northern or southern gate, the choice of the east gate is deliberate, leading in a straight line across the central spine of the consecrated sacredness to the Holy of Holies. So if you look at, again, let me go to, let's see right here. So this, let me, so this here would be let's see, it doesn't have the north. So this is the northern gate, the southern gate, obviously, and then the east gate right here, the eastern gateway entering directly into the Holy of Holies. So definitely deliberate how he was entering in and why. All right, so going back to the other slide. So here we think about the glory of the Most High, right? And it's hard to define that glory, but we can see it described in many scriptures, and we could call it a radiant outshining of his character and his presence. The Bible says that his glory radiates throughout all his creation, and it's in Psalm 19 that we're going to read that in a minute. Yet there's also a concept of the visible and tangible glory of the Most High, which is the Shekinah. And this is scattered about all throughout the Torah and the prophets. In many causes, it is described as a cloud. So, in many cases, sorry, it's described as a cloud. And we're going to read a lot of scriptures that describe his glory physically. And so, without the glory of the Adon of Israel, Ezekiel's temple was nothing more than a building. With the glory of the Adon, it was a sacred place, a habitation for him, and the radiance of his presence. So, just something very, very beautiful. And Lisa, this is almost identical to the experience and a vision John has with the Messiah. Yep. Yep, very, very, very similar. That's why this portion, these chapters of Ezekiel tie in so well with Revelation. I believe it's 20 through 22. The last portion of that book, of the last book of the Bible. Let me go to the connections because I want to read through all of the connections of his glory. All right, so just to make reference again to Ezekiel 11:23, it says, "And the glory of the Adon went up from the midst of the city and stood on the mountain, which is on the east side of the gate, or of the city, rather." So again, this is where his glory had departed from the city, and now it's returning through in New Jerusalem. Psalm 19, 1 through 4 says, "The heavens declare the glory of the Adon, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun." This is just a beautiful depiction of his presence, and of his glory. So definitely a beautiful scripture to share for that. And as Liz said, and shows us truly what will be the end and in the millennial kingdom, his Torah, Israel, all of it. Yes. As in the law being mentioned. And what I found interesting too here is that it says here, "Write it down in their sight so that they may keep its whole design and all its ordinances." So if you're thinking that this would have been a third temple physically here on earth built by man, that's probably what people would run with. But this is spiritual. So, in us embodying the tabernacle being his temple, I feel that this would be tied together. Its whole design and all its ordinances being us um keeping his commandments and bearing the testimony of Messiah, as it's written also in Revelation. So I just wanted to point that out there as well. All right, so now let's go into the scriptures about his glory. So we see in Exodus 13:21 through 22, and it says, "And the Adon went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people." Next, Exodus 16:10. "Now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Adon appeared in the cloud." And then Exodus 19:19. "And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the Most High answered him by voice." And that, when we think about the voice of many waters, that's I can only imagine what Moses heard, or what maybe, if you think about it, his voice as a voice of many waters. So those who cannot truly discern his voice, may hear waves of water, while those who are in tune with him, have his ruach, are actually able to hear the audible voice of the Most High. I don't know, just a thought. Exodus 24:15 through 18. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. Now the glory of the Adon rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of the Adon was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So going back to Zechariah 2, of him being a fire, a wall of fire all around, that's this description here. And also like the burning bush that came before Moses. I think this is this it? No, I thought I included it as well, but that's in Exodus also. I don't have the precept. I think it's 13 or 3. It's where he told him his name also. Exodus 33, 9 through 10 says, And it came to pass when Moses entered the tabernacle that the pillar of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Adon talked with Moses. All the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose and worshipped, each man in his tent door. They kept a distance, if you see that. Let's see what else that I had. Let me make sure that this is also included in this portion here. Okay, so there's also other references in Leviticus. If you guys want to write them down, I have Numbers 12:25. I'm sorry, 11:25, Numbers 12, verse 5, and Numbers 16, verse 42. Then Leviticus 16, verse 2. And it was, I want to make sure. Exodus 3, verse 4 and 5. Because we also see, I'm going to read verse 5 that says, Do not come any closer, the Most High said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And we see in that portion also, let me go back. That it says, let's see, which verse was it? Right here, verse 7. And he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. So I don't know, it really truly is so many connections and confirmations that it's gonna be him, dwelling with us in that time. We also see in Ezekiel 10:4, when he had the vision of the cherub. Then the glory of the Adon went up from the cherub and passed over the threshold of the temple. And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of the Adon's glory. And if you recall in this chapter as well, he sees the rainbow, he sees the four corners with the cherubim, one on each side, and the angel that grabs the coal of fire, or the burning coal out of the center, and then the throne of heaven right above it. Such a beautiful vision too. I truly love that portion as well. Um, Luke 135, and the angel answered and said to her, The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore also that Holy One who is to be born, will be called the son of the Elohim. So this was the angel speaking to Mary when she became pregnant, carrying the Messiah in her womb. And we see that how it's described that his presence, his ruach, would overshadow her. Liz has so many connections here also with the doorpost and the threshold covenant. If you want to share, you can, Liz. You can unmute yourself and share it. Because I didn't include anything about the doorpost and the threshold covenant, but
I mean, it just what I was thinking of is how, you know, how in Deuteronomy it states to write these words on the doorposts
oh,
or
right. Yes, yes.
your
Yes.
gate, basically, and it's basically to remind the children on their way in and on their way out, basically to keep his commandments, right? To obey. So reminding them about the covenant. Yes, the mezuzah. But not only that, but the threshold. I don't know if you guys remember. I went over this in detail, so I'm not gonna take too much of it. But when we did the Hebrew studies,
Yes.
how the threshold is also a representation of his covenant, because the threshold of the door had to do where the basin was, and where the blood was in that basin. So
Right.
if
The blood was collected there.
exactly, so if you would trample over the blood, it's like you were how do you say this? Basically stepping over the threshold. Like the threshold covenant has to do with your obedience or the lack of obedience thereof
Right.
with Torah, his commandments. So I'm just saying this because on verse, I believe is 7, no, 8. I'm going to read it. It says, when they set their threshold by my threshold, you see, and their doorpost by my doorpost, with a wall between them and me, they defiled my holy name by the abominations which they committed. So, in other words, you see there how they basically
They
replaced
trampled.
the covenant, his covenant, by their own.
Right.
That's what I get from it. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jeroboam when he did his own Passover, right? That he did the two, was it the two calves? I can't remember clearly, but yeah, that he had his own Passover and his own time, his own month, doing his own thing, basically. Going against the ordinances and instructions of the Most High. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. Um, I have a few more, a few more connections about his glory here. And it's Luke 9:34 to 35, and this was the transfiguration. And it says, while he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were fearful as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, this is my beloved son, hear him. Acts 1:9 says, now when he had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And then about his return, Luke 21:27. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. You know what's so beautiful? This happened yesterday, actually. We were driving, and my daughter and my youngest son were looking up. They love looking at the clouds, and they're always talking about how Yasha is in the clouds, and he's the sun, and all of his brightness, all of this stuff. And yesterday, Savannah asks me, and she's like, Mommy, isn't he supposed to come in a cloud? Because I see, like, she was like, I see like a horse. It looks like a horse in the clouds. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you have no idea what it is that you're saying and how on point it is. So yeah, they hear us. They hear us, and I'm sure that Abba speaks to them too. So I just wanted to share that. Which brings me to Revelation 1:7 and verse 15 as well. And it says, behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him. And all the tribes of the earth will mourn because of him. Even so, Amen. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. So we're going to talk about that as well. um, Revelation 19:6, and says, and I heard as it were the voice of a great multitude, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunderings, saying, Alleluia, for the Adon Elohim omnipotent reigns. Whew. Can't wait for that day. Let me just check where I am here. Okay. Ezekiel 12:4. By day you shall bring out your belongings in their sight as though going into captivity, and at evening you shall go in their sight like those who go into captivity. And this was just like as a reminder as well of him being directed by the Adon through his presence, because his glory had already departed in the previous chapter, in chapter 11. Revelation 18:1. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. Ezekiel 9:8. So it was that while they were killing them, I was left alone, and I fell on my face and cried out and said, Ah, Adon Elohim, will you destroy all the remnant of Israel in pouring out your fury on Jerusalem? So we see here also that his glory was something to be feared. And the Israelites, when Moses was going up to the mountain, if you recall, they wanted him to be the one to go up there and be ministered by the Adon and come back and give them whatever message. They did not feel worthy, or were even fearful about approaching him and his throne. Sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, that's open.
No, fine.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so continuing, Ezekiel 128. Like the appearance of a rainbow in a cloud on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the brightness all around it. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Elohim. So when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard a voice of one speaking. Again, just so many connections. I couldn't help it. And he recalls here the encounter that he had with him at the river Kebar. So I arose in Ezekiel 3:23, sorry. So I arose and went out into the plain, and behold, the glory of the Adon stood there, like the glory which I saw by the river Kebar, and I fell on my face. Let me see what. Oh, and Yasmin said, I think of Noah, of when Noah saw a rainbow that represented covenant. Yes, absolutely. I love that came up there, and then we see it as described right over his throne in Ezekiel's first vision. So beautiful. All right, Ezekiel 11:13. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my place and make sure. Okay. Ezekiel 11:13. Now it happened while I was prophesying that Pelatiah, the son of Benaniah, died. Then I fell on my face and cried with a loud voice and said, Ah, Adon Elohim, will you make a complete end of the remnant of Israel? And this, if you recall, this was when the priests that remained in the land were there, like profaning his name essentially, and one of them fell dead. So again, his glory would appear, and it was in the form of instruction, in the form of judgment. And so they were familiar with that, and um it 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 produced fear. And I think, to a point, we would probably, and we've talked about this before, we would probably be feeling in the same manner, fearful and reverent, and all the all the crazy emotions that you could probably think of. Um, we were actually talking about this week, in when we were doing the Matthew portion, about how when you feel the Messiah, when he felt compassion over Jerusalem, he felt something in his bowels, in his stomach. And the bowels or the stomach are very closely connected, are situated near your heart. So if you think about like when you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach, you know, when something bad happens, or even when you're excited about something, when you get butterflies in your stomach, you know, that's that very area that I feel is the center of everything. Probably even where his Ruach dwells within us and stirs us up to do or feel and connected to him. So when Messiah stood over Jerusalem and felt compassion, crying out that they were like sheep without a shepherd, he felt that feeling in the pit of his stomach. So I don't know. I would say maybe it would probably be even more magnified when if we were to if and when we get to see his glory in that manner as well. All right, so Exodus 40:34. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Adon filled the tabernacle. And this was continuing in the same thing. Condorito style, I'll definitely plop. Condorito style. Yes, definitely fall on my face. All right. First Chronicles 5:11 through 14. And the children of Gad dwelt next to them in the land of Bashan as far as Salcah. Joel was the chief, Shaphan the next, then Jaanai, and Shaphat in Bashan. And their brethren of their father's house Michael, Meshulam, Sheba, Jorai, Jashan, Zaya, and Eber, 7 in all. These were the children. Oh no, this I was trying to see like does it end? Let me see if I might have included the wrong. It might be Second Chronicles. The point that I was trying to make was once the tabernacle and the temple were built, there was a mention of his glory coming in to dwell there as well in the form of a cloud too. Acts 8:39 says, Now when they came up out of the water, the spirit of the Adon caught Philip away, so that the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. I'm sorry, give me one moment, guys. The service is good. Sorry, my son just came home from youth service. All right. Haggai 2:7 through 9 says, And I will shake all the nations, and they shall come to the desire of all nations, and I will fill this temple with glory, says the Adon of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, says the Adon of hosts. The glory of this latter temple shall be greater than the former, says the Adon of hosts. And in this place I will give peace, says the Adon of hosts. And what a day that will be, and that peace that we will receive. I feel like that's the peace that is spoken of in the scriptures as the peace that surpasses all understanding, because we don't understand it now, but eventually we will. Eventually we will be able to experience it firsthand, and I'm sure it will be beautiful. Let me go back. Well, actually, let's see. I want to make sure that okay, I'll come back to this. I wanted to see if I could go back to the presentation yet, but I'll go back to it in a minute. All right. Isaiah 6:3, and these were the cherubim, as we recall. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Adon of hosts, the whole earth full of his glory. And Leviticus 1:1, and the Adon called to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle of meeting. And so now this is just speaking in the portion about his voice like a sound of many waters, or just his voice altogether. So Isaiah 66:6 says, The sound of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, the voice of the Adon, who fully repays his enemies. So let's go back to verse 6, just to get the context here. This is a connection to verse 6. So it says, Then I heard him speaking to me from the temple while a man stood beside me. So that's who we're hearing. And he's going to come and get his, get the vengeance, as it says in, I believe is it in Leviticus? Vengeance is mine, says the Adon. I don't remember exactly, but I know that that's something that he speaks on. Revelation 16:1. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the seven angels, Go and pour out the bowels of the wrath of the Elohim on the earth. And again, this is, just how he is speaking here about how he would put their harlotry away, how his temple would no longer be defiled or profaned, and he would be glorified. Ezekiel 2:1, and he said to me, Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak to you. Psalm 47:8, the Most High reigns over the nations. The Most High sits on his holy throne. And that's for verse 7. So I'm just now kind of going chronologically here as well. Leviticus 26:30 says, I will destroy your high places, cut down your incense altars, and cast your carcasses on the lifeless forms of your idols, and my soul shall abhor you. So again, he was in Ezekiel, he's saying how his temple would no longer be defiled, or his Israel would no longer defile his holy name by their harlotry or with the carcasses of their kings on their high places. So this is a connection to that. And then also Revelation 22:3 that says, And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of the Elohim and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. Psalm 99:1, the Adon reigns, let the peoples tremble. He dwells between the cherubim, let the earth be moved. Amen to that. And John 14:23, Yasha answered and said to him, If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home in him. So there's also the benefits of no longer profaning his name and being and dwelling in safety with him. Zechariah 14:20-21, it says, In that day, holiness to the Adon shall be engraved on the bells of the horses. The pots in the Adon's house shall be like the bowls before the altar. Yes, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holiness to the Adon of hosts. Everyone who sacrifices shall come and take them and cook in them. In that day, there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Adon of hosts. And I think specifically it's saying a Canaanite because, as we know, that was the line that was most against him. And also, I believe making a distinction even of Gentiles who were grafted in, no longer being Gentiles, but being considered his own children through adoption. Revelation 21, 2-3 says, Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from the Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of the Elohim is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. The Adon himself will be with them and be their Elohim. Amen. So much hope in Revelations 21. Joel 3:17. So you shall know that I am the Adon your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then Jerusalem shall be holy, and no aliens shall ever pass through her again. So again, just ongoing confirmation. And well, let me also read Leviticus 37. I'm sorry, Ezekiel 37. I don't know where I got Leviticus from. Ezekiel 37:26-28. Moreover, Papi, Not right now. Here. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it shall be an everlasting covenant with them. I will establish them and multiply them, and I will set my sanctuary in their midst forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Indeed, I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. The nations also will know that I, the Adon, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is in their midst forevermore. So yes, going back to even Joel 3:17, um, dwelling in Zion, his holy mountain, and no aliens shall ever pass through her again. That makes also the confirmation of the outer court and what its significance will be in New Jerusalem. That will be the dwelling place for those who are not in covenant with him. All right, verse 8 connections. We have Second Kings, or no, sorry, Ezekiel 23:39. For after they had slain their children for their idols, on the same day they came into my sanctuary to profane it. And indeed, thus they have done in the midst of my house. So Ezekiel speaking on the things that were happening and how now there's a clarification that it would no longer happen again. 2 Kings 21, 4 through 7 says, He also built altars in the house of the Adon, of which the Adon had said, In Jerusalem I will put my name. And he built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Adon. Also, he made his sons pass through the fire, practiced soothsaying, used witchcraft, and consulted spiritists and mediums. He did much evil in the sight of the Adon to provoke him to anger. He even set a carved image of Asherah that he had made in the house of which the Adon had said to David and to Solomon his son, In this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all of the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. So we see here how the people had done like the worst of the worst. And obviously this was in the early times of the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdoms having split. But in any case, we're seeing the idolatry that took place and how it was ongoing. So again, this is just what the Most High is saying would no longer happen. Ezekiel 5:11 says, Therefore, as I live, says the Adon, surely because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your detestable things and with all your abominations, therefore I will also diminish you. My eye will not spare, nor will I have any pity. So a reference just to the judgment that took place, that would be taking place. So it took place back then, and it would continue. It has continued over time because there has been a continuation as well of the profanity against the Most High, against his name, just a lack of respect and reverence to his holiness. Colossians 3, 5 through 9 says, Therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of the Elohim is coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you yourselves once walked when you lived in them. But now you yourselves are to put off all these anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds. So this is just obviously a call to holiness, connecting it with verse 9, saying, Now let them put their harlotry and their carcasses and the carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell in their midst forever. And when you think of kings, it's not just physical kings, but whatever is being idolized in your heart. Anything that you are idolizing becomes rules and reigns over your life. Next, we have Hosea 2:2. And it says, Bring charges against your mother. Bring charges, for she is not my wife, nor am I her husband. Let her put away her harlotries from her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts. So not only through idolatry is that what rules and reigns over your life, but it's also something that you are committing adultery through. So a lot of that metaphorical speaking through the scriptures that can really confuse people sometimes if you don't have an understanding of the marriage covenant that you make with the Father when you say, I will do whatever it is that you want me to do. But He's so gracious and kind and patient with us that he does little by little as we continue to seek him reveal these things and make it plain so that when you read it, it's like, wow, like he said it so many times. He said it so many times in so many ways that you just can't help but understand and desire to do right by him. Romans 6:21. What fruit did you have then in the things of which you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death. So we also see a portion here where he starts speaking about how they would be ashamed of all that they had done when they would see his goodness, how kind and how merciful he was to rebuild or to build the temple and be so intricate in what he was doing in that design. Let me see where it was that we have. I think I'm gonna go back to the presentation really quick. Okay, so going back to the voice of many waters. As Ezekiel experienced his vision, the glory of the Most High had an aspect that could be heard and seen. It sounded like the awesome and inspiring sound of a great waterfall, the sound of many waters. It looked massive and radiant. The earth shone. These are things that oh, sorry, hold on, let me see. Can you see it now? Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So Ezekiel recognized this as the same display of glory when he saw, in a negative sense, as we read, Ezekiel 10 through 11 by the river Kebar. Then the glory of the Adon came in judgment to destroy the city. The Most High proclaimed that he had come back to the temple to reign. It was his throne where he would stand in the place, where he would stand the place of the soles of my feet, which is what it says there in that precept, and where he would abide. This shows not only the Elohim's abiding, even eternal relationship with Israel as a covenant people, but also shows his regard for that land. This will be especially evident in the millennial kingdom and is the general context of Ezekiel 40 through 48, as we have seen as we've been reading through. So here describing the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities. This states at least one of the reasons that the Most High gave this vision to Ezekiel. Through his description of the promised temple down to the measure of its pattern, Israel would see how great the restoring love and grace of the Adon was toward them. It would make them ashamed of their iniquities. The very detail of the description was an assurance that to Israel that this was real. The restoration would be real. This made it important for Ezekiel to write it down in their sight. A foundational principle of Ezekiel's temple was holiness. The law of the temple said twice for emphasis. So we see that in, I think it's verse 11 and then again in verse 12, was the whole area surrounding the mountain top, is most holy. The presence of the Most High's glory abided in holiness. And listen, I'm foreshadowing too because we are his temple. Exactly. Amen. All right, so let's go back now to continuing in the connections here. And the Torah to be inscribed in our hearts. Yes. Yes, it all does. It all does connect. It's so beautiful. His word is alive, alive and active. All right, so I think we read Romans 6:21. So Ezekiel 23:31 through 32. You have walked in the way of your sister, therefore I will put her cup in your hand. Thus says the Adon Elohim, you shall drink of your sister's cup, the deep and wide one. You shall be laughed to scorn and held in derision. It contains much. So this is also speaking to the shame that the people would feel. And he was, I believe that the Elohim was hopeful, or obviously he knew that that was going to take place, but it was his desire to see true repentance. Yes. Yeah, exactly. The cup, right, the cup that Messiah took for us as well. That's a representation of it. And through seeing that, I know that a lot of us, and I mean, if not all of us, have had a moment where you reflect on what he did for us, how he died for us, and how he suffered such a gruesome death on our behalf. And that moves you. That makes you feel like, wow, he really loved me. Like, wow, that I don't know, that's something that can affirm one's identity of who you are in him, knowing that he did exactly that just so that you could live. And Ezekiel 36:27 says, I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, that you will keep my judgments and do them. So we are here now on the latter end of this portion here, speaking about verse 11 and verse 12. So Ezekiel 11:20, that they may walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. John 13:17. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So to know is to do, and is to yada him, to intimately know him and have that connection with him. Because when you have that connection with him, you just can't help but obey. You want to obey it. Please, it gives you joy to know that you are being obedient to the Father and doing all of the things that he has wanted his people to do from the beginning. Hebrews 8:5, who serve the copy of the shadow of the heavenly things. As Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle, for he said, see that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So as Moses was given the physical instruction, we were given the spiritual instructions. 1 Corinthians 11:2. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions just as I delivered them to you. So again, just a continuation of how we have been admonished over and over again to keep his commandments, to keep his law, because his law is good, as it is said in Romans, in the book of Romans. Revelation 21:27, but there shall by no means enter it anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. And if you think about it, anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, all of these are results of breaking his perfect Torah, of even breaking one of the 10 commandments. Psalm 93:5, your testimonies are very sure. Holiness adorns your house, O Adon, forever. Amen. With that being said, we will continue now. Liz, you can just read through the rest of the chapter.
Excuse me. These are the measurements of the altar in cubits. The cubit is 1 cubit and a handbreadth. The base 1 cubit high and 1 cubit wide, with a rim all around its edge of 1 span. This is the height of the altar, from the base on the ground to the lower ledge, 2 cubits the width of the ledge, 1 cubit from the smaller ledge to the larger ledge, 4 cubits, and the width of the ledge, 1 cubit. The altar hearth is 4 cubits high, with 4 horns extending upward from the hearth. The altar hearth is 12 cubits long, 12 wide, square at its 4 corners. The ledge 14 cubits long and 14 wide on its 4 sides, with a rim of half a cubit around it, its base 1 cubit all around, and its steps face toward the east. And he said to me, Son of man, thus says the Adon Elohim, these are the ordinances for the altar on the day when it is made, for sacrificing burnt offerings on it, and for sprinkling blood on it. You shall give a young bull for a sin offering to the priests, the Levites, who are of the seed of Zadok, who approach me to minister to me, says the Adon Elohim. You shall take some of its blood on it, put it on the 4 horns of the altar, on the 4 corners of the ledge, and on the rim around it. Thus you shall cleanse it and make atonement for it. Then you shall also take the bull of the sin offering, and burn it in the appointed place of the temple, outside the sanctuary. On the second day you shall offer a kid of the goats without blemish for a sin offering, and they shall cleanse the altar as they cleansed it with the bull. When you have finished cleansing it, you shall offer a young bull without blemish and a ram from the flock without blemish. When you offer them before the Adon, the priests shall throw salt on them, and they will offer them as a burnt offering to the Adon. Every day for 7 days you shall prepare a goat for a sin offering. They shall also prepare a young bull and a ram from the flock, but without blemish. 7 days they shall make atonement for the altar and purify it, and so consecrate it. When these days are over, it shall be on the 8th day and thereafter that the priest shall offer the burnt offerings and your peace offerings on the altar, and I will accept you, says the Adon Elohim.
Amen. So, if you know, this all sounds a whole lot like Leviticus, right? In the instructions that the priests were being given to to do what they were called to do. But the interesting thing here is that it ends with this last portion right here. When these days are over, it shall be on the 8th day, and thereafter that the priest shall offer your burnt offerings and your peace offerings on the altar, and I will accept you. It's a distinction there. Now spiritual. Yes, exactly. That's the point that I was getting at. The last great day when we would dwell with him in eternity. So now I'm gonna look at I think this is the last slide that I have for tonight. So after the describing of the Adon's glory and the promise of his abiding presence, Ezekiel went back to describing the place of of sacrifice. Like every true altar of the Elohim, this altar points to the cross and the finished work of Messiah upon the tree. Believers aren't forgiven because animals died, but because they put their faith in the Adon. We're going to read some of these scriptures in a minute. Therefore, the use of animal sacrifices in the millennial temple no more minimizes or negates the finished work of Messiah than these sacrifices did before he died. It appears that the sacrifices will be offered in a memorial sense. So, this is what I was mentioning earlier, and as expressions of love and devotion to the Most High. They will also bring people together for fellowship and feasting to the glory of the Adon. So, through Ezekiel and his vision, the Most High instructed Israel how they should consecrate the altar for his temple to come. A series of sacrifices over 7 days consecrated the altar, and it would then begin its normal service on the 8th day and thereafter. The priests also throw salt on the altar, as we see. The preservation qualities of salt apparently rendered it a perfect symbol of the permanence of covenant relationship. The addition of salt to the ritual served as a reminder to Ezekiel and the priest of the Most High's commitment to his people. And finally, he says, and I will accept you. Through the Levitical offerings, the sacrifices of Israel, and they themselves as well were accepted by the Adon. But then we see that in a spiritual sense, if you think about it from the millennial sense, these offerings are that sweet aroma when we are we sacrifice ourselves for him and we live for him and we obey him. So our worship is that sweet aroma to him. So thus Ezekiel is not presenting a new administrative principle with God. For acceptance with the Adon is on the basis of sacrifice. So obedience being better than sacrifice in a sense as well. That's the spiritual sacrifice that we are making now for him. Just being obedient to him. And I believe that that pleases him more than anything. Second Chronicles 4:1 says, moreover, he made a bronze altar. 20 cubits was its length, 20 cubits its width, and 10 cubits its height. So this was the measurements of the altar that was made for the original temple. Exodus 27, 1 through 8. You shall make an altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. You shall make its horn on its 4 corners. Its horns shall be of one piece with it, and you shall overlay it with bronze. Also, you shall make its pans to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, and its fire pans. You shall make all of its utensils of bronze. You shall make a grate for it, a network of bronze. And on the network you shall make 4 bronze rings at its 4 corners. You shall put it under the rim of the altar beneath, then that the network may be midway up the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. The poles shall be put in the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. You shall make it hollow with boards, and as it was shown you on the mountain, so shall they make it. So again, I wanted to give the distinction because as we spoke also last week, all of the instructions or everything that was being described to Ezekiel wasn't being described in the sense of materials that would be used or anything like that, because it is all spiritual what he was seeing. Whereas here we see the different materials that are being mentioned. We see the acacia wood. We see the different instruments that would be placed there. So just a difference as well as I don't know, like I said, reading through this, it really feels like in a spiritual sense what was also being instructed and what you would read in reading the book of Leviticus or even the book of Exodus. So continuing in Exodus 38, 1 through 2, it says, he made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood. 5 cubits was its length, and 5 cubits its width. It was square, and its height was 3 cubits. He made its horns on its 4 corners. The horns were of one piece with it, and he overlaid it with bronze. So he was instructed, and then he acted. He acted in obedience. 1 Kings 18:32. Then with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Adon, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. So again, the physical acts of the physical temple. Hebrews 9:21 through 22. Then likewise he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry, and according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission. So here in the book of Hebrews, it also recaps what was done by the Levitical priesthood, because it also speaks about the transference to the Melchizedek priesthood through our Messiah, who shed his blood and now became the remission of sins for us. Hebrews 12:24 continues and says, to Yasha, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. So if you recall in the book of Genesis, the Most High calls Cain out about Abel's blood crying out because he was the product of murder. And so as his blood continued to cry out, that same sin continued all throughout time. Still happens today, unfortunately. But our Messiah's blood is the blood of the new covenant, the better covenant, and removes that need for the sacrificial blood to be poured out for anything else, as far as atonement is concerned. Hebrews 10:4-12, which I referenced in the slide, says, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sins. Therefore, when he came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you do not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin you had no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come. In the volume of the book it is written of me to do your will, O Elohim. Previously saying, sacrifice and offering, burnt offerings and offerings for sin you did not desire nor had pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. Then he said, behold, I have come to do your will, O Elohim. He takes away the first that he may establish the second. By that we will have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Yahshua HaMashiach once for all. And every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of the Elohim. Amen. And let's set the threshold covenant, which was since Abraham. So just a beautiful connection there. The book of Hebrews sums things up so beautifully. I have another one here as well. I think I included quite a bit of Hebrews tonight also. Psalm 51:16-17 says, for you do not desire sacrifice, or else I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offering. The sacrifices of the Elohim are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. These things, O Adon, you will not despise. So we see once again that now what pleases him and what always has pleased him is our willingness to obey, our willingness to pursue righteousness with him. Sorry, give me one moment, guys. Okay. Ezekiel 44:10 and verse 15, and we'll be reading this chapter next week as well. And it says, and Levites who went far from me when Israel went astray, who strayed away from me after their idols, they shall bear their iniquity. 15 says, but the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, who kept charge of my sanctuary, when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near me to minister to me, and they shall stand before me to offer to me the fat and the blood, says the Adon Elohim. And this is just connecting it to the reference to the sons of Zadok. And let me see exactly. I think it was above here. Right, verse 19, who shall give a young bull for a sin offering to the priests, the Levites, who are of the seed of Zadok, who approach me to minister to me. Hebrews 7:27 says, who does not need daily as those high priests to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's. For this he did once and for all when he offered himself up. So you see the differences here from where the Levitical priesthood and what they did, and once our Messiah came, that is the one thing that well, one of the things, because judgment of the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was also no longer is no longer something that is acknowledged or used when it comes to the law, but the Levitical sacrificial system is something that was done away, is the only thing that was done away with the death of our Messiah, because his death was the ultimate sacrifice. And that doesn't mean that the whole law was done away with. Just saying. Jeremiah 33, 18 through 22. Nor shall the priests, the Levites, lack a man to offer burnt offerings before me, to kindle grain offerings, and to sacrifice continually. And the word of the Adon came to Jeremiah, saying, Thus says the Adon, if you break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there will not be day and night in their season, then my covenant may also be broken with David my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign on his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my ministers. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, nor the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the descendants of David my servant and the Levites who minister to me. And that was his remedy for making sure that his seed was multiplied no matter what. Isaiah 66:22. For as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, says the Adon, so shall your descendants and your name remain. And Leviticus 16:19. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. So again, going back to the Levitical sacrificial system and how they would make sure that the sins of the people were atoned for. Hebrews 9:21 through 23. Then likewise he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission. Therefore it was necessary that the copies of the things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. And what is the better sacrifice? Our Messiah. And Liz had said here the threshold covenant, which was since Abraham. Yes. So as she mentioned, the basin at the bottom the bottom of the door was what collected the blood once it was spread around. So just a great connection there. Leviticus 4:34. The priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering and pour all the remaining blood at the base of the altar, which collected the blood. Hebrews 13:21. Make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight through Yahshua HaMashiach, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Which is just a reference to, let me go back over here to verse 20. Just continuing with describing the instructions that were given also to Ezekiel. But again, Hebrews is the best at explaining the difference and the the no longer necessity of sacrificing the animals for atonement. Isaiah 53:6 and verse 10 and it says, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Adon has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Verse 10, yet it pleased the Adon to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Adon shall prosper in his hand. So this is speaking of Messiah who was bruised for our transgressions. Leviticus 8:18 through 21. And then he brought the ram as the burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and Moses killed it. Then he sprinkled the blood all around on the altar, and he cut the ram into pieces, and Moses burned the head, the pieces, and the fat. Then he washed the entrails and the legs in the water. And Moses burned the whole ram on the altar. It was a burnt sacrifice for a sweet aroma, an offering made by fire to the Adon, as the Adon had commanded Moses. So again, just making more references. I'm not going to read these because they continue in the same about the offerings, but you can make note of Exodus 29 and 1 and Leviticus 2, verse 3 as well. Well, actually, I'm going to read Leviticus 2 since it speaks about the salt. It says, and every offering of your grain offering you shall season with salt. You shall not allow the salt of the covenant of your Elohim to be lacking from your grain offering. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. And as I mentioned, the preservative properties of salt was a good indication, or it had meaning to why the Most High wanted his offerings to be sprinkled with salt as well. So here now we see in Mark 9, 49 through 50, it says, for everyone will be seasoned with fire, and every sacrifice will be seasoned with salt. Salt is good, but if the salt loses its flavor, how will you season it? Have salt in yourself and have peace with one another. So definitely a significance there with the salt and its preservation for not spoiling, not spoiling before the Most High. And also meat with no seasoning reeks. That's how it was a sweet aroma to him. Yes. Numbers 18:19. All the heave offerings of the holy things with the children of Israel offered to the Adon I have given to you and your sons and daughters with you as an ordinance forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the Adon with you and your descendants with you. And this one is a popular one, Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Sorry, hold on. Numbers 18:19. And then so again going back to Matthew 5:13, so we are that salt as well. We're called to be preserved before him. And I believe that's a connection to remaining holy as he is holy. Going back to in chapter 42 to separate the common from the holy as well, or the clean from the unclean. Exodus 29:35 through 37. Thus you shall do to Aaron and his sons according to all that I have commanded you. 7 days you shall consecrate them. And you shall offer a bull every day as a sin offering for atonement. You shall cleanse the altar when you make atonement for it, and you shall anoint it to sanctify it. 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and sanctify it. And the altar shall be most holy. Whoever touches the altar must be holy. So this is also just connecting to the 7 days that are mentioned. Leviticus 8:33 also makes mention of it, and it says, and you shall not go outside the door of the tabernacle of meeting for 7 days until the days of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he shall consecrate you. So if you think about it, in the sense of now, we are within those 7 days and we are going through a spiritual consecration here and now as well. And First Peter 2:5 that says, you also as living stones are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to the Elohim through Yahshua HaMashiach. Another great comparison here too. And Philippians 2:7, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. That was our Messiah. Yazi said, I saw stones walking out of my house today. Oh, that's so beautiful. And probably not cut stones, right? Natural stones. There's something special about a stone that has not been tampered with. Romans 12:1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of the Elohim, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable to the Elohim, which is your reasonable service. And Hebrews 13:15. Therefore, by him, let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise to the Elohim, that is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. And that way, when we offer these offerings to him, he will accept us. So I'm just so grateful that we will get the opportunity, Abba willing, to be able to serve him, to worship him, and be those shiny stones all around. I can't wait. So that concludes our study for tonight. As always, I pray that it was edifying to you and that you learned something. As always, I encourage whoever is watching this to rightly divide the word of truth. Take this up to Abba, allow him to reveal things to you, to speak to you through his Ruach, because the heart that is willing will most definitely receive the truth. Blessings to you, and we will see you next time. Shalom. Let me stop the recording. Oh my gosh.